All right. So good morning and welcome to the HOA Fight Club educational series. This morning I'm going to talk about the CC&Rs, where it's just a couple of you. Right now, I think that we should just kind of go through what you do and don't know, because it's kind of easier to do it this way. So the declaration, we're going to start with that. I'm going to share my screen because I have desktop. We're going to do this. I have a declaration here that was mine from the village on James Street that I lived in. The first thing that when I get a complaint from a homeowner, the first thing I do is ask for the declaration and bylaws. The articles of incorporation are important also, but the declaration and bylaws are the most important thing that you can do. Most of the time when people have issues, it is because they are not understanding what the CC&Rs are saying. And usually the board and the attorneys will take advantage of those same CC&Rs and they'll ignore them and do what they want to do until somebody calls them on what they're doing and tell them that it's wrong. So as I go through the declaration, the first thing I want to look at is ownership. What is, how are you an owner? Most people do not know that owners are only the people on the titles or the deeds. So if your significant other, your spouse are not on the title, they are not a member of that corporation. They have no rights in that corporation. And they can't serve on the board. They can't do a lot of different things. So I know a lot of people show up as a husband and wife team, but the wife or the husband isn't on the by or the title in the deed, and that really affects the ownership. And if most people knew that, I think last week I found a association that the husband and wife were serving on the board. Now, even if they're both members, they cannot serve on the board at the same time. And because that gives them a powerful voting interest in the association, and nobody can have more of an interest than the other owners. So that's one of the first thing I really look for is how the ownership is defined, because sometimes they will allow the spouse or significant others. I always go through and look at the common areas and the limited common areas. Usually if it's a condo association, everything is almost a common area. The only thing that's not a common area in a condo association is usually your interior. So when it comes to like the flooring, your responsibility is the laminate. Their responsibility is everything under the laminate. So if there's water intrusion that comes up from the foundation, that is the association's responsibility. I always say anything that's halfway in, halfway out is usually the association's responsibility, the common walls. So I really try to look at the details of what the common and limited common areas are. Most of the time, balconies and patios are limited common areas assigned to one person, but it's still a limited common area. That makes it the association's responsibility for repairs, for fencing, and things like that. So you really want to know what your common areas are and your limited common areas are. The other thing you want to look at is what is the purpose of the association? And I use this quote all the time. The purpose of the association is usually to create harmony and make sure that the architecture all stays the same, that everything is in compliance. It is not to fine and foreclose. So I really want to stress that a nonprofit organization, if your association is a nonprofit, then they have rules they have to follow for the nonprofits. Nonprofits are supposed to be for the good of the people. They're not supposed to hurt anyone. So I'm having a hard time thinking of HOA as a nonprofit because they do make a profit, a huge profit from the homeowners if they're fining people and they're foreclosing on people. So it's just that's something that I need to fight through with the laws, and I'm working on that. Um, the restrictions and the right of access is the next thing I look for. So I have people telling me that they can't get into their community centers or their cabanas, that the board has to give them permission. If it is a common area, you have a right to that common area at all times. So if you do not have a key to your cabana, that's wrong because you own that cabana too. Everybody has the right to use that cabana equally. Now, they can reserve it, and then they can charge a fee for reserving that cabana. But they can't, you can use your pool, your cabanas, all of that stuff is, you have the right of easement to go through those. So make sure that you're not being restricted from your common areas. That is another violation of the CC&Rs. As you go down, a management maintenance. So board members hire property managers to do the management. Some don't. Now, it is up to the board whether they hire it or not, but there are some CC&Rs say that they have to be professionally managed. I have had an association that was being managed by the board, but their CC&R stated they have to have professional management. So once we did that, they ended up hiring a management company and all of that kind of stuff. I have another one right now that they can have an executive secretary. Well, the executive secretary has to be a member of the corporation, and she's not. And they're paying this woman $75,000 a year. That's wrong. That's an abuse of the funds and what your budget should be. That could save a huge amount of money for people doing their job. I think that if a board member is getting paid, first of all, it has to be in the bylaws. The amount that they are to get paid, a board member has to be voted into and amended into the bylaws. So if your treasurer is making money and it doesn't have an amount set in the bylaws, that is an illegal payment. So you need to be aware of that when you're looking over these budgets. Your assessments is everything. And now I really have a problem with boards that are, especially in condo associations. First of all, condo associations have the responsibility to repair and maintain. So if you're living in a condo association that is in disrepair, they should be turned into the law. I mean, it drives me crazy. These people have the responsibility to maintain and repair and restore. So if you have disrepair, I started going to the mayors and the city prosecutors because those repairs, the first thing was our roofs weren't permitted and inspected when I lived in my condo association. They redid the roofs. They did not inspect or get permits. So if they don't get these inspections and permits, what if one of those roofs falls in? We just had a condominium tower fall because of the lack of maintenance from the board and the association, which for me is a good example of why we need city inspections to these condo associations, especially, HOA is a real different thing when you're in a home and you don't have sharing walls, but when you're sharing those damages like that, it's just really sad what happened to those people. And it's because their board, their property manager, and their attorney failed the association. The attorney came onto Twitter and was bragging about her clients. Oh, we're so sorry about our clients and all this and blah, blah, blah. And the first thing I asked was, what did you do to protect them? Nothing. So the key for attorneys is delay, deny, deflect. That's all they do. That's all HOA attorneys do because they need conflict and they need it to go on forever so that they get paid. All right, so let's look at the next one. It goes over budgets and assessments, and I read through all of this stuff, but every CC&R, every declaration is going to have a lien to foreclose policy. Most people don't know that the association has power of attorney over your home. They already have a pre-lien on it. So if they decide they want to go put a lien on your home, all they have to do is go file it in the court. So you have to understand when you own these homes, you don't own your home. You're kind of leasing it from the association. You purchased into a corporation, not into a home. So the land that you think you own, you don't own that land if you're in an association. So it's kind of the same thing. You just own the inside of your home. They have complete control of everything else. So, but there are rules and we have to understand the rules. And so, I go through the CC&Rs and I look at all the notices and they always say that you have the right to the records. I've not ever come by a declaration that says that the board doesn't have to give you the records of the association. Now attorneys are trying to make laws for those records of the associations, or the property manager wants you to fill out a form or whatever. You have the right to go in and see those records yourself. Go in and see those records, no matter what you do. If you live in an association, I would go in, get as many records as you can, take pictures of them, whether you're having problems or not with your association. You should be grabbing those records and using those records for your purpose, so that you can understand where the money went, who voted on it, and is it recorded in the minutes? And those are really important things to know. When I finally got in to see the records of my association, there was 18 boxes full of records. And these records showed attorneys and the property manager and the board conspiring and colluding to commit crimes, to the emails that I read from back and forth were, we can take it out of their automatic payments. They had a girl that was, she was on automatic payments for her assessments. Every year we had to fill out a tenant registration form with all of our information. Well, that year she didn't fill out her tenant registration form. So the board fined her $150 for not filling out this form. Well, 2 months later, her car tabs expired in the parking lot. Her car had been sitting there. So they fined her for her car tabs being expired. So 6 months had gone by, and they keep adding late fees and attorney's fees. They finally put a lien on the home and they foreclosed. Well, when they foreclosed, they opened the door and they found the lady dead in her home. So if the board would have done a health and welfare check, they would have found that she was already dead, and they could have contacted the family or whatever, because they had the information. They had it from last year. And they just refused to do it. And then they tried to hide the fact that the neighbor had passed in her home. And what they did, they sold that home and they took it out of her trust. They had put the lien on it. They foreclosed on the home. And then they sold it for a profit. So it's really sad. Her family didn't get the house out of her trust. Nobody got it. So I really think that it's important to stay on what the board is doing and getting the records, attending the meetings, and getting the minutes from every meeting is really, really important. When I finally went through my lawsuit, I had gone through minutes from 2007. I had read every minute that they had taken it from every monthly board meeting. And in those minutes, you could see where they were violating the law. And they did it blatantly. They didn't care. But they actually recorded it in the minutes. So it was really, really nice of them to record it for my lawsuit. Let's go through the declarant issue. If you're not dealing with a declarant, you don't even need to worry about it. If you're in a property that's being built and the declarant's in control, I wouldn't want to live there. The declarant is king. He gets to do whatever he wants, whenever he wants. He gets to amend the bylaws, the declaration, until he's not the declarant anymore. So I always caution people when they buy into these brand new housing developments, the developer has control until he sells probably 90% or more of those homes. Sometimes it's 100%. So you have no voting rights until that is done. So and the other thing for those new properties that I always warn is, people don't understand they're going to get a bill for the water, the sewer lines, everything that's pulled to that property. Those bills in that new property are going to go onto that homeowner. I had a client that they bought a brand new home. They were loving it. 2 months later, they get a bill for $30,000 for the sewer and water lines. So just be aware when you're buying into a new home. That's something that we need to look at. They're going to bill you for that stuff. So that's what so as I'm looking at the CC&Rs, I don't really go through them with a fine tooth comb. I go through and pick out. So if I'm going to address the board, the first thing I do is I will come, and if I need part of the declaration, I will cut and paste. I actually take my cell phone and take a snapshot of the thing and then send it to so I can email. So my letters always come out with the actual CC&Rs quoted on the letter. I will cut and paste them because it's so much easier than quoting them and making it up. So when you do that, that's the first thing I go through. The next thing is the bylaws. I always go through the bylaws, and they are the most important part, because bylaws will really spell out everything for you. Good morning, Charissa. um, so as you go through, you see what is going on here. We're going to go down to this is kind of a long CC&Rs for mine. So the bylaws. So the bylaws give you all the definitions and the responsibilities. The first one is always going to be your membership. And this is the part that I was talking about, where if you're not on the title, you are not a member. And I actually have Trissa, who just came on to the meeting. She's actually been on the title, and they wouldn't give her any information because she wasn't on the title. They kept telling her that. So you have to know what your rights are. And like I said, the first thing I would do if I was in an association, I would go through and I would pull the county's register. You can always go to the county records. You can pull up your association and it will show you all the owners in the association. Most associations in their bylaws say that you have to have a members list. So they should have a current list of all members of the association and their contacts so that you can contact them. You have that right to contact the people in your association, and the board doesn't have the right to keep their information quiet. Voting. So we're going to look at the voting. So when you're going to vote, of course, there's one vote per home, per lot. I have never seen that there's ever been more than one vote. So if you and your wife are both on the title, you split that vote. So you only get a half a vote and she gets a vote, or, most couples agree. So it's not a huge issue. But remember, if the spouse is not on the title, they are not entitled to anything. They are not entitled to vote. They are not entitled to serve on the board. It's a really good way of, if you have a board that's rogue, it's a good way to check and see if they're actually eligible to serve. So that's a good way to get a board that's rogue off the board. One easy way. I actually did that. I had 3 people removed from the board because they were not members of the association. Their spouses were. So the board should always check to make sure you're a member before they allow you to be on the board. That's their duty, their reasonable duty. Every year you have to have an annual meeting. If your board is delaying that annual meeting, that is a violation of the laws. I know we've been through COVID, but most states have made it so that electronic Zoom can be used, all of the things can be used for people to participate in all the meetings. They have a right to be at the meetings. Everybody has a right to be at the meetings, but the annual meeting is so important because that's where you vote. And you need to know how many people you're supposed to vote for each year. One association I was helping, they had sent out the annual meeting notice. They said there was 3 positions open. And there was actually 4 positions open, but the board wanted to appoint somebody. So, which is illegal. They cannot appoint people. They can appoint people until the next vote comes up. So make sure that if you're, somebody's coming up for vote, they always have to be confirmed in a vote. Even if they were appointed at the next annual meeting, they have to be confirmed or replaced. Special meetings. This is one of the key things that I use. Homeowners can call special meetings. You just have to know how many people you need to have. Where like in mine, it was, I think, 20% for a special meeting. I had to have 20%, but I actually had to have 51% of the vote to remove a board member. So you need to know how many people you need, your percentage to get your signatures to call the special meeting. You need to know how many makes a quorum. There are some associations that a quorum is 51% of the members have to be present. And you need to know what you need to do to remove that board member. So the special meetings and the voting is very, very important. The place of the meeting, the annual meeting should always be the same. The notice of the meetings, you at least deserve 10 days notice. All the states have changed the notice things, so you'll have to look at your state, but it's at least 10 days. Usually for annual meetings, it's kind of funny. They'll send out the notice 50 days. If they have 50 days to do it, they'll send it out way ahead of time because they're hoping you'll forget there's an annual meeting by the time it comes to be that time. So don't forget to go to that annual meeting. That is the most important meeting that you have. That is the one meeting that you can make motions, is at the annual meeting. So an annual meeting or a budget meeting, anytime there's a meeting of the ownership, The owners have the right to make motions. You can motion at a annual meeting that you remove the board, or you can motion that they do whatever you need them to do. You have that right. You need to know what Robert's rules say. Robert's Rules of Order is very important. That is going to tell you how to make motions, how to second those motions, and how to confirm those motions. So that is something that you're really going to need to know. The quorum, of course, like here, it says 25% of a quorum is what we needed. They had never had a quorum in my association until I showed up. So they had to go out begging for people to participate. By the time I was done, I would say 3/4 of the ownership was showing up to the board meetings every month. So out of 130 homes, we would have 80 homeowners show up to these meetings. So the board lost all their power. They didn't have any power left when we were done with them, which is the way it should be. The board shouldn't have ultimate power. So it's only the boards that have that ultimate power is because the people aren't participating. So if the people would participate, they would lose their power. You got to watch the balloting. Like in this one, it says that once they counted the ballots, they get to destroy them. The people don't get to see them. Washington State has changed that law. They do have to keep the ballots now, but this one was in my thing, they could destroy the ballot. So when we did a recall, they just destroyed all the proxies so that they didn't have to prove the proxies and then wanted to call it fair. Let's go down to the board of directors. Board of directors powers and duties. The board of directors duties is not to find and foreclose. It is to create harmony, take care of the property, make sure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. I know that the attorneys want you to fine people and put late fees on them because that's how they make money. Always pay your HOA dues before you even pay your mortgage. The HOA has more power to foreclose on you than the mortgage does. So now that did change in Washington State. Washington State now they cannot put liens on for any fines, fees, or attorney's fees. So Washington State can only put a lien on a home if you're past due on your assessments. They cannot include any of those other fees. And that was one of the laws that I passed this last year or this last session in Washington State, and it went into effect July 1st. So those people can't get foreclosed on. The association will have to show what assessments are past due and any assessments for this next year in Washington State that cannot foreclose for over a year because of the COVID. So know what your state laws have done due to COVID too. That's really going to be important. The term of the directors. Usually the term of directors is no more than 3 years. My board had served over 20 years when I came in, so they had been running it forever. They were running quite a scheme of fining everybody and putting them into foreclosure. The association had liened every home except for the board members at one time or another, and they had foreclosed on almost half of the homes. So you can go to your county website and type in the HOA for the property records, and it'll show all the liens, the foreclosures that your association has done. I suggest you do that. Go on the county website and see how many foreclosures and liens your association has done. I always tell people they should do this before they move into the property because that will tell you how that board is running and how the association is running. The directors, the qualifications of a director. I was asked this the other day, what is the qualification? Your qualifications to be a director or a board member is you're a member. That's your qualification. You don't need anything special. Now, sometimes that's a good thing, but we are allowing uneducated volunteers to run multi-million-dollar corporations. So you want to make sure that you know the qualifications of your directors and how they are dealing with things, how they're running things. Because if they don't know what they're doing, that hurts the association and it hurts your investment. Vacancies always, the board always has the right to appoint people for vacancies. I always tell people that if you're doing a recall of the board, you want to make sure that you do not allow them to appoint after you recall a board. You have to have a special, we want to recall the board and vote in a new board. So anybody going through a recall of the board, I would say call me and let me walk you through the recall. removal, everything goes through how to remove people from the board, the regular meetings. The laws say that you can attend all regular board meetings. If your board meeting is, your board is meeting in secret and you don't know where they're meeting at, that's against the law and they need to be called on it. So make sure that you have access to every single meeting, and owners have the right to be heard, whether that's at the beginning of the meeting or at the end of the meeting. They might not have the right to participate during the meeting, but they do have, there has to be a time set for homeowners to be heard. So make sure that you're demanding your board is allowing homeowners to be heard. The notices, again, we went through the notices, it's the same thing. If you're sending a letter of any sort, you always want to mail it. You can email it, but you always want to mail it certified. Washington State has made it legal to email, and that electronic transmission is okay, but I still mail everything certified mail. And I always mail it to the president, his home or her home, and then I mail it to the property manager, and I mail it to the attorney if there's an attorney involved, making sure that they all have notice. And sometimes I mail it to the insurance company of the association, because the insurance company requires DNA. You have to have director and officers insurance. So if your directors are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, you need to notify the insurance company. So they can't say, well, we didn't know. So when I sued my association, that insurance company knew. I had given them notice more than once. So they ended up paying at the end because they ignored what was going on. That's not the insurance company's, responsibility. They're supposed to be making sure that they're covering people that are honest. So let's go down. Officers, there's always the officers, the duties, we've gone through that, the vacancies. Let's talk about amending the bylaws and the declaration. I noticed there's a lot of people that have declaration and bylaw changes. I don't know how they're getting that quorum. So if your bylaws are being changed, they have to have a special meeting of the ownership, and usually it's at least 67% of the ownership has to sign off on a bylaws. And in Washington State, it's 90% of the homeowners have to be there to change a declaration. So know what the percentage is for those things. If they come out saying that, now they can change the rules and regulations, but they cannot change the bylaws. The other thing I notice is that the rules and regulations sometimes don't go with the bylaws. So the board writes out all these new rules, but they break the bylaws and the declaration. So you need to make sure that anytime there's a change, that you voice your concern. You only, in some states, you only have 30 days. Washington State, it's 90 days. You have 90 days to complain about those bylaws, which is really important because the bylaws also tell you the rental limits. So if you want to rent your home out or your condo, they can put limits on, oh, we can only rent out 20%. So make sure you know how many people you need to change those documents. It's really important that they do it right, and call them on it if they don't. Understand that the corporation is a corporation. Now, my corporation couldn't take loans for the association. So they had to use the reserves and they had to use special assessments. Now my association was pretty funded. So they had the money in the association, but I have seen, this is the only documents that I've seen that the board can't take a loan. Now, when the board takes a loan, that is your home that they're putting up to guarantee that loan. So they use all the homeowners' homes for the loan as their collateral. So if the board doesn't do things right and they misspend that money and that association goes bankrupt, you go bankrupt. You lose your home. So make sure that you know that they're all, now another thing is the property manager. If you're making payments directly to the property manager in the property manager's name, if they go bankrupt, you go bankrupt. So make sure that your payments are never made out to a property management company. That is not legal. You can only make your payments for assessments to the association in the association's name. So I know that the board that I was dealing with was having the money go to the property management company, and they were commingling funds, and they were pushing the funds out to another nonprofit. And that nonprofit was the board. They had a nonprofit that they were skimming the money off of too. $200,000 a year I could prove. So it's really important that you know where your money's going. I hate the fact that people, I went to every board meeting. I needed to know where the money was going. And the board wouldn't let me on the board. They're always looking for volunteers, and they were always telling me how tough it was to be a board member. I volunteered the entire time I lived there. And guess what? I never got to be on the board. And I was the only one nominated by the homeowners. How do you think that happens? So you have to know where your rights are. You have to know where your money's being spent. Go in and get those documents, everything you can. This tells you, the bylaws tell you about the rules and how they have to be changed. Rules are pretty simple to change. They're going to change them whenever they feel like it. And then it goes to the amendments, which we have gone through. So I kind of want to also show people, this is a good, the resale cert that I got was really good from this company. They actually showed all the budgets, and I want to show everybody, while we have time, what a budget should actually look like. Sorry, I have to go through all this. So this was their rules and regulations, by the way. I mean, look how many pages they had for rules and regulations in my association. I mean, they went through every detail. If the board didn't like something, they just put it in a rule. So, and half these rules broke the declaration and bylaws. Now, let's go through this part really quick while we're here. Violations, fines, and expenses. If you break a rule, it's always, first of all, your board has to have a compliance type of thing. So they have to spell out what the rules are, what the violations are, how much those violations are, and they have to be recorded in the rules or the bylaws. So if you look at this, the first rule violation is a warning letter without a fine. Then the second time you get, after 10 days, you get a fine. Even a warning letter, if you get a warning letter, you have the right to due process. So if you get a warning letter, ask for due process and explain or deny what you're doing. I found that the board was just fining people for everything, but they weren't offering due process. They weren't telling people they had a right to a hearing. So when I moved in, this is a place that had been running for 25 years. They had never had a due process hearing with any homeowner. So I demanded it, and they were finding me every month. I was getting a fine for, the curtains, the garbage, whatever they could find, they would try to find me, but they had no evidence. The one time that I was fined $50 for smoking in our backyard at 4:30 in the morning. We were in Utah at the time of the violation. The board was completely making it up. They were lying, and they were having the neighbor that I had removed from the board because he wasn't a member. He made false allegations. It cost the association $24,000 to lose that situation. They spent $24,000 on an attorney to fight me for a $50 fine that they had no proof I did. So that hurts the association. If they're spending more than $1,000 on an attorney in your association, they're doing something wrong, because the board should never need an attorney. They have the declaration and the bylaws to go through. So if they're hiring an attorney, they're going to put those attorney bills on you if you're the problem. So you need to know what your rights are, because most of the time they can't put those bills on you unless they take you to court. So understand your rights. Always ask for due process every time, and make sure that they have evidence and they can prove that evidence. Otherwise, that fine needs to be dropped and that situation needs to be dropped. Here's kind of like this is actually in our association documents. It was the due process hearing. They would never mail this form to the association at all, to the members. So the members had no idea, and the board's reasoning for that was, well, it's in the CC&Rs, so you should know. So that's how they would get away with that. We'll go through that. These are all the people that were on the board. This is their resolution for collections. If you are past due, they're going to charge anywhere from 12 to, I've seen, up to 30% interest on your payment, your assessment. So understand that it can get quite high. I don't think it should be legal, but I don't think anybody should be charged anything more. If they're having problems paying their assessment, adding late fees and that is not going to help. And it doesn't benefit the association if they have to hire an attorney and spend $5,000 to collect a $50 late fee. So I really find that that's a misuse of funds when they hire attorneys that way. All right, that was our, this is what our tenant registration form looked like. This was our garbages. Everybody should have a certificate of insurance for your home, for your association. If you don't have this certificate, which I always ask for the full policy, I don't ask for just this certificate of insurance, but you should at least have a certificate of insurance, and it is required to be given to you once a year. So make sure you have your updated certificate of insurance. And then we're going to go down. Now, this is what an actual budget should look like. And not the budget, but the operating funds. So when you get the information from the board, they always show you what their budget or their property manager's little spreadsheet. Well, this is actually the balance sheet. So for my association, so you can tell where every check went, how much they spent, where they were spending it, what account it came from. But this was never disclosed to any of the homeowners. The reason I have this is because I asked for a resale cert in Washington State. They call it a resale cert. And it just they have to give you the last 120 days worth of budgets and finances and they have to spell it out. So when I got this, I had compared it to this was a transfer from one property manager to another. There was $120,000 missing from the turnover from one property manager to another. And they told me I wouldn't understand because, it's really complicated. And I deal with QuickBooks. I own, 3 corporations. So it wasn't complicated to me. They stole money. So that was part of my lawsuit, that they were stealing money from the association and that money went missing. But this is how it should look. So when you're, going through, ask for a balance sheet, ask for the profit and loss statements. Don't ask for the financials just that way. Ask for profit and loss and the balance sheets because they will go into the details that you need to know. I really like looking at this because you can see for your utilities, the water, the sewer, everything was spelled out, how much we were spending on it. So this is the way your balance sheets should look. And you can tell what's being spent on the management, additional management fees. Think about it. Every time the manager had to come to the property to do an inspection, he got paid extra. So the legal fees and collections, they had $7,000 in legal fees, almost $8,000 right here. So you want to make sure that they're not spending the money. It makes no sense. At one time, my association had $13,000 past due in assessments, which seems like a lot, but they spent $38,000 on attorneys to collect that $13,000 worth of assessments. It would have been better for them to do a payment plan or something else instead of involving the attorneys. All right, so that's what the financials should look like when you get them. Let's see what else we have down here that we want to go through. Do you guys have any questions so far?
I do. How do
Okay.
I?
Hey, Teresa.
Hi, good morning. I'm sorry. Yeah, when you have an item on the budget that should not exist, for example, my current HOA fee, they have a telephone service fee of $14,000. Is that something
What are they
that
doing for $14,000?
that's what I'm asking, and they don't tell.
Yeah,
And
and that's one reason, Teresa, you really need to get the balance sheet like this because it should show exactly what they're spending on. A phone line, even if you had to have it for a gate, if you have a gate that opens and closes, that requires a phone line. But it wouldn't be 14,000. I mean, a phone line, $50 to $100 a month at the most. So yes, I would question that, but I would go through the budget and anything that doesn't make sense, Teresa, make a note of it. And then when we'll send a letter to Mr. Ober, who's gone quiet.
this is not the same association, it's another one.
Oh, another one. Okay.
Yeah,
So
another one that is in
yeah,
San Diego, and
you
we don't have a gate or something there.
yeah, there shouldn't be any phone charges then. I noticed that in my association, the board president was paying her cell phone bill with the association funds. Anything like that would have to be approved to pay for. No member of the corporation can profit from the corporation. So paying their cell phone bill with that is a profit. They're profiting from the association and they're getting a benefit that the rest of the homeowners don't get. So I would question that. I would make a note of that, Teresa, and question that.
Another question. I found that like the condo in Madison, like in Pasadena, the one that you know about,
Uh-huh.
they have like 20,000 or 30,000 painting or whatever fee. How, if there's an accident, I don't know if there is, but if there's an accident to an individual condo, do we have a way to get the insurance policy to pay for it? And when can we do that? Because we buy insurance for the condo, right? For the
Yeah.
project. But
Yeah.
then if an individual unit costs 30,000 for something, it's not
Yeah.
making
So the insurance that you have, first of all, because that's a condominium, they have to
Mhm,
insure the entire property.
mhm,
Um, now, if somebody gets hurt in your home, inside your home, you're responsible for it. But if somebody, we had a neighbor that they had put speed bumps in and they were slippery, and a neighbor slipped and broke her ankle on that speed bump. That's the association's responsibility.
mm.
So they have to pay for any damages or any injuries on that property. And if you have somebody that's gotten hurt on a property, I would report it to the insurance company of record and to the board and the property manager, and go from there. And if they complain or whatever, then then you can take it from there. But yeah, the insurance has to cover. They have to. That's why it's so frustrating, because these condominiums have to be insured for the entire amount. So if you have water intrusion or anything, that should go under the insurance. My insurance company ended up paying a ton more than they would have had to pay if they just would have fixed my home. So, and that's the problem. You have to go to civil court to most of the times to deal with this. So, civil court is so expensive. I am trying to get it so that you don't have to go to civil court to do this. I think that the attorney general's office should be involved with this. When somebody violates a declaration on in a corporation, they should be relieved and forced to step down. And the AG should have that power to force something, especially when it was so obvious in mine. So just remember that. Now, I wanted to show you this because everybody's talking about people that are past due. You actually in Washington state have the right to know who's past due and who's making payments and who's not. So I actually have a list of everybody who's past due if they were, um, uh, this is a great example. So here's the Paula Henderson. Paula Henderson owed $7,211. All of that money is attorney's fees. This is the woman that was found deceased in her condo. So she had $150 fine and a $50 fine for the car. So $200 in fines ended up being $7,211. She was only 1 month past due on her assessment at the time that they foreclosed, because her auto pay had ended because she didn't renew it because of her being dead. So know who owes money. You should know who owes money to the association. They don't have to tell you who it is, but they should tell you how much it is that is past due. You have a right to know everything because you're a member of that corporation. So be involved, go to the board meetings, participate, make sure they know. The insurance, here's the revenue, here's all that kind of stuff. I did see somebody paying, I don't know if it was Teresa's or not, but the insurance was crazy price. $30,000 for a condo association is about right. In a year, if your association is paying more than that, I would question it.
Yeah, I was talking to the insurance people. They said the earthquake insurance in Los Angeles is really high because of Los Angeles is in a high area, I mean high risk area.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I was looking at that so much every month. That's
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah, yeah, you just need to be aware. Well, and that's why the balance sheet is really good, and the profit and loss statements, because they will show what they've actually spent and how much they budgeted. So, you have to kind of pay attention to those details, and make sure that the money, our board would charge $3,000 a year for, beauty bark. Well, we never had beauty bark laid ever. So they were packing the budget. So $3,000 extra there. They had $5,000 extra for the sprinkler system that they had, to be checked. It was only $9,000 a year, but they were charging, $14,000 a year for the homeowner. So they packed the budget so that the monies, and then the next year they would redo the same, they would increase the budget and they would take all the monies that they didn't spend last year and that would be pushed out to another nonprofit. So it was a way to hide the money. Don't let them hide the money because you're going to be there and you want to see I don't want to see their budget. I don't want to see the property manager spreadsheet. I want to see the actual balance sheets and profit and loss statements. That's what I want to see.
Do
Um,
they? I'm
you're
sorry. Yeah, because in the other HOA financial budget or whatever, they have all the details about what they are spending, but they at the end they have other budget, the other services, which
So let me tell you, as a corporation, so I own a telecommunications company and a gymnastics club. And when I do my taxes, I can't put anything under other
right,
without it spelled out. So if I have other, now there is others, but it's like my cell phone, because that's not part of the tax form. But your other account, so if it does say other, it should have the items listed. So it should say other, and then it should list cell phones or whatever they're charging, postage. That could be considered other, but they have to put it in it. They have to describe what the other is. So that's why the balance sheet is so important because it accounts for every dime they're spending. And this balance sheet is available at any time. It's constantly updated in QuickBooks. Or whatever thing they use. But if it's a professional, they'll have a balance sheet. I can print a balance sheet out right now. So make sure that you ask for the balance sheet and know what's on that and watch the records. I'm telling you, like I said, I noticed that there was over $200,000 missing a year and then 120,000 when they switched property management companies. Nobody else would have known that if I wasn't paying attention to what the budget was at that time. So now here's like this is a good example for you, Trish. So look at the direct, so repairs and maintenances. They had to actually spell out every little maintenance thing they did.
they did. Then they add other at the end, which
Yeah,
was
let's see if this one has other. Let's see. Other cost of goods. So landscaping materials. So, but see, they put what the other was. They actually spelled it out. Let's go down a little farther. Interest. My association actually was making money on, I mean, they were putting $500,000 into CDs and things like that. So it was really, this was our reserves, so we had a bunch of money in this association and nobody knew where the money was going until we got these balance sheets. So, all right. So then let's go on. This is their little, what they're going to do for each year. Which of course never happened. This was their plan for the year and what they were budgeting. This one, it always cracks me up. So if you look at this income here, assessments, this is what our assessments were. And then miscellaneous income, they were counting on having at least $12,000 worth of fines each month. They were counting on it in their budget. So they were planning on finding $1,000 worth of fines each month. That was in their budget. And then delinquency, the same thing. They planned for $3,600 of people not paying their bills. So, they shouldn't, this is just not the way you should never have income that's miscellaneous. You should only plan on your assessments as your income if you're a corporation. So this all changed after we found this out. So after we changed property management companies, we went through 5 different property management companies when I was there because of every time we got a new property management company, they decided they were going to bully us and, harass us. So I was really quick about getting rid of property management companies. Usually if you call out a property management company publicly and make complaints to CAI about them, if they're CAI certified, they will drop you. They will drop the association because they don't want the bad reputation. If they already have a bad reputation, they're not going to care. So This is the contract for the management company. You have a right to all contracts that are done with the association. So if they have a contract with an attorney, a property manager, an accountant, construction, you have a right to those contracts. So make sure that you understand what those contracts are. That sometimes are pretty interesting about what they do. You know, when they're using, I see this at the bottom here, it says tow vehicles after proper notice using TPM letterhead. So they were planning on towing vehicles. We had no parking issue, but they were making it a parking issue. So that to be in their contract was really, it was like, really? Oversee maintenance of the ground, parking lots, and seasonal flowers. The board or the property manager never came to the property except for the board meeting. So how are they doing all of this? Process liens for non-payment. So they had planned on liening. So just make sure you know what's in the contracts of the property managers and the attorneys. They will always hold harmless. So the property manager is held harmless for everything they do. If you have a problem with the property management company, you have to sue the association. You cannot sue the property manager or the attorney. So I am working on changing those laws because I think that they should be held accountable for their actions, especially if they're advising a board to break the rules. Did you have a question, Teresa?
Yeah, what I'm saying is that I want to see the contract between our association and the property management company, and the board members at the time says, oh, you cannot have that. Then it's the property management company's owner says, oh, you can. But then when I ask for them, they don't respond. I'm asking the 10th time. I said, I'm requesting that because I wanted to know if
Oh,
they don't do their job, do they get any fine at all?
well, okay, no, not the only people that can sue the property manager and the attorney is the board. And they've
Right.
agreed to hold them harmless. So usually it's 10 days. I thought in the law, in the California law, I thought it was 10 days to get things over to you, Teresa. So they haven't given you everything yet?
Nothing.
Oh, all right. Well, there are some, I think the attorney has gone quiet because of the complaints that we've made. So that might be, I did just send in another complaint about him. So they are looking into him right now and we'll figure that out in a little bit. But every Monday, Tris, I want you to email them telling them exactly what you're missing. I want, over and over, Monday and Friday. I haven't received anything, keep at them because that'll be important in the long run to
Okay.
be able to prove that you were trying to get what you needed from them and they weren't complying with because that's going to be part of Mr. Ober's his complaint, is that he was involved and yet he's not following the law.
Okay.
So I'll add that to his complaint. All right, so let's look at do you guys have reserve studies in your states? Does Texas have a reserve study?
I have no idea.
Okay, so every property in Washington state has to have a reserve study, which I think is hilarious. So these reserve studies are supposed to come in, look at your property, tell you exactly what's wrong, which they do. They're usually, they tell you, how much damage is done. You notice that this one says no site visit here. Well, there's no site visit because they only have to come out once every 3 years, but they get to charge you every year for this reserve study. So we're paying for these reserve studies to be done. My issue with the reserve study is the people that are doing are identifying things wrong with the property. If they see a violation, like on my property where the roofs weren't permitted or inspected, they should have reported that to the city. They have no responsibility. So we have this company making millions of dollars a year off these properties and has no responsibility in their actions and what they report. So I used this reserve study. I took it to the mayor. I said, look, right here, we had zero life left on our gutters and our roofs. And they finally changed the roofs, which they didn't get permits for, but they never changed the gutters. And then 3 years later, we had 11 years left on our gutters. How did we gain 11 years on the gutters unless the reserve company was covering up for the association, which they were? So the reserve company worked with the board to cover up their the discrepancies. So I really go through these reserve studies. I know they're long and they're drawn out, especially the onsite. So if you have a reserve study, they should tell you what the funding plan is, and which is just a bunch of garbage. It's a way, the funding plan for the reserves is a way to charge money and not be accountable for that money. I have a really hard time with the whole reserve thing if you're not going to hold the people, the board responsible for that money that they're supposed to be putting in the reserve. So here was our project balance, and it goes through all the things, and it tells you what is going, the life of everything, the asphalt, the gates, gates, I think are one of the biggest waste of money an association can have. Because they always break and they don't keep people out. So it goes through and shows you everything. Like here, see, we had 0 life left on our gutters here. And then 2 years, 3 years later, on the next reserve study that I got, we had 11 years left, and they had done nothing to the gutters. So hold them accountable. I actually went to the city and showed the mayor exactly what they were doing, to call it out, because these people need to be licensed and they need to be held accountable. So know what's in that. And let's see what else we have. We're almost to the end of my resale cert. So this is what I get when you purchase your home. You get this whole packet in Washington State that tells you about everything, which can be good. But when I got this, when I got my resale cert, when I purchased my home, it was a fraudulent resale cert. The board had given me, I purchased in 2014, and they gave me a 2012, which I didn't know. I had never bought in an association before. So the 2012, they gave me that, which was all the balance was for those years, but they had spent all that money by the time I purchased in 2014. So if I would have had the right resale cert, I wouldn't have purchased into that condominium, because I did go through the money and everything before I purchased this home. I went through the resale cert. I saw that they had almost $1 million in their reserve. They were doing good funding. But when we actually purchased, they were down to $200,000 in their reserves. And they had, like I said, they had lied about what was going on. They lied about the water intrusion that was happening on the property. They lied about everything. So it's really important to go through these. I always suggest people, before they purchase, going to board meetings and attending any meetings of the association, so they know how everything's being ran. If a board will not let a new potential person come to the board meeting that's going to purchase into that association, I would never purchase there. I wouldn't purchase into a condo association at all, or an HOA again, but these are things that you should look for. If you're having problems with your association, these are the things we need to quote. We need to be able to tell, we have to work together to make sure that everybody understands what's going on. Like I said, I spend a lot of time emailing the legislators in Washington State, showing the issues of the condos associations, especially HOAs, how their rights are being taken over. Everybody I help, it seems that the board and the property managers don't know what the CC&Rs say. So pointing out those things really helps. I have to help Teresa. We have been trying to get the records of her association. We have been fighting the attorney and the property managers, but we're fighting them. We're standing up to them. So anybody that needs help, I would say that you should work on writing letters. And if you don't know how to write letters, contact me. I will help you write a letter. I will help you understand your CC&Rs and quote them. I do everything I do for free. If people want to make donations, that's great, they can. But I just want to make sure that we are being a force together. We have to build an army of people for the HOA. Teresa, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'd like to know how to write letters to the high official that should be looking into it, like you are doing. Because California, it's a big problem. Because even just myself, the condo in Pasadena, and I have another one in San Diego. That's what I was talking about, the phone and other charges.
Well, what I did, Trissa, was I made a list, an email list of all the legislators in Washington State. And then I added the Attorney General, because they have, and you guys should be able to participate in this. So when legislators make laws, they have what they call stakeholders meetings. So those stakeholders are everybody that wants to deal with whatever problem it is. So I ended up being I'm on the stakeholders group for Washington State for HOA. Prior to that, the only people on that group was the CAI, Community Associations Institute. They are the lobbyists, the attorneys, the property managers, their trades group. They do not work for the people, they work for their trades group. That is their oath, is to do what's best for the trades group, not for your associations. So people need to understand what CAI is and how they're lobbyists and they're paying these government officials to create laws that violate the Constitution. Arizona and or Washington, you can't sign away your constitutional rights, but every other state, you can sign away your constitutional rights. So people need to demand that that's not allowed. Nobody should be above the Constitution. No law shall be passed that's not fair and equal. So we can send some letters to the attorney generals and the legislators, Teresa. I'll show you how to write those. I usually am very brief in those, and I point out just little things at a time. If you write a big long letter, they're not going to pay attention to it.
Right.
So I'll show you how I do that. I just write little brief things, and I am sending it to them all the time. So they know who I am. CAI knows who I am now. The CAI Washington, they actually worked with me this last legislative session. They voted with me. They agreed with me because I was showing them who was violating the CC&Rs and the law, and it ended up being all the CAI reps. So they're doing it for their own personal gain. We always need to remember that a property manager doesn't care about your association. They care about the money they're making from that association. So we need to hold them. The only way to hold them responsible is by calling them out. When I write letters, I usually send a letter to the insurance companies notifying them. But I actually had, when I was fighting with my association, I would CC the attorney general and the legislators on the letters I was sending back and forth to my association, because now those people are your witnesses of what's going on too. So when I went to, and I included my mayor, your mayors are so important. Go see your mayor, go talk to the mayor, find out why they're not doing anything to protect the, we can't have condominiums falling because their lack of doing what they're supposed to do. In Washington, they made a law that every multi-housing complex, anything with anything with 2 or more buildings attached, they have to be inspected every 3 years. But they they deleted the condo associations out of there. They don't have to inspect the condo associations. Why are our buildings any less than the other people's buildings to make sure they're safe and up to code? And I actually had the city come over and do an inspection of my home and tell me everything that was wrong with it. So the city came out, they did an inspection of the home, they saw the water intrusion, they saw the door wasn't up to code, they saw that the dryer vents, when they redid the roofs, they never hooked the dryer vents up again. So all the dryer vents were just blowing for 6 years in the attics, which created mold and moisture. And so I included the city and held them responsible. This is your city. You should be making sure that your people that are licensed to do business in your city are doing what they're supposed to do. So go to your mayors, go to the city, the permit office, and talk to them. Tell them you want them to come out and check your home. Don't take no for an answer. The reason I have the voice I do right now is because I don't take no for an answer. And I have dealt with this for about 6 years now, and I will not let any homeowner fight for their rights by themselves. They need to know that there's people out there in the same position and that want the same changes in the laws. This is our start. This is how we become a better group of people. I've helped over 91 people in this last year alone. 91 people from Alaska to New York, all the way across the United States, fighting their HOA. That is insane. I get new people every single day, that need help. And usually it's something stupid, and it's something that could be, fixed. I actually had an association that the board didn't know what their CC&R say, and they didn't have a property manager, and they were seniors. So they came to me and they asked me what the declaration and the bylaw said. There was a developer that wanted to buy into their association and add to their association. Well, you can't do it. It's against the CC&Rs. So the declaration says you can't sever anything and have anything joined to it. So they wouldn't have known that they were having city meetings, city council meetings about, letting this developer build, and they were bullying this association into doing what they wanted them to do. Well, once they found out that they didn't have to do it, they stood their ground. But, people, even boards don't know their CC&Rs. Who reads them? Who reads the declaration unless you need it? Unless you're having an issue, most people are just like, whatever, things are running great, but everything's always one vote away from a rogue board that will steal your money. It's so easy to steal an HOA. So you need to hold your board accountable, the property managers accountable, the attorneys, by calling them out. I went public, I went all over Twitter and Facebook, and I went to the BBB and the Attorney General and the legislators. Thank goodness I have a really good legislator, Representative Tina Orwell and Representative James Walsh in Washington State felt my pain. And we fought really hard for the laws this year. And one is a Democrat and one is a Republican. And this is not an issue that is just one-sided. This is an issue that affects anybody and everybody. So those two legislators worked together to do this. And when we did the law so they couldn't fine people into foreclosure anymore, the legislators voted 100% for the law. So I have made a difference in one state. And just that one baby step is it'll help people no matter what. So, but if I was an army of, think about it, CAI comes onto the meetings with 3 people and there's one of me. If I come on the next time and I have 5 people or 10 people, the legislators listen. I've actually killed bills on the floor. So just by my testimony, they've dropped the bills. So we need to just be paying attention. And it's unfortunate that homeowners have to have this extra duty. I think there should be warnings for HOA before people purchase into these corporations so that people really understand. And that's something that the Attorney General's office should be warning people of. There should be a consumer warning about HOA and condo associations and how they are ran by uneducated volunteers, unlicensed property managers who have no education except for CAI telling them what to do. There is no governance or accountability in HOA. So demand it. We need to demand it with our legislators and have the laws changed to protect us. And it's going to take a little bit of time, but we're building an army. I have many people that CC'd me or responded last night off my email list. It just is good that we're all working together. So nobody should have to do this alone. So I'm here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
No, I appreciate you guys' support. Did you guys have any more questions?
Are you gonna do another one of these meetings? I would very much like to get my wife to
Yeah,
see this.
I'm actually gonna plan on doing them once every Saturday. I probably will move the time to 10 or 11, my time in Texas right now. The Alaska people were like, hey.
Yeah.
And so are the California people. And I do have I have really good connections with George Staropoli from Arizona is amazing. He knows the laws. He actually writes briefs for the laws and goes to court for us. So I think that it was early. He wanted to come, but it was early for him too. So I'm going to do these ones. I think it's just good. It's good to meet people. Yeah. It's also good to know that you're not alone. That there's people out there that are willing to fight for you and fight with you. So we shouldn't have to do this alone. And Senator Peterson from Seattle, when he was fighting for gay rights, his quote was, no, we shouldn't have to fight for one person at a time for their rights. And we shouldn't either. Homeowners shouldn't have to fight one homeowner at a time for our rights to have harmony and peace in our homes. That's our sanctuary. So we shouldn't be harassed and bullied in our homes by rogue boards and property managers that are trying to profit from our demise. So that's my say. So yes, next Saturday is planning at 11 my time. So that'll be 11 Texas time. So it'll be about 9 o'clock on the 9 and 8 o'clock on the East Coast and Alaska time. So
will you send out a Zoom invite?
I will. I'll do the same
Okay.
thing I did this last time. I will do it right after I'm done with this, and invite your friends, invite your family, invite whoever you want, because I think that these are really important. I think it's good to just get together and have chats. And if you have anything that you want to discuss, send me that information. And HOA Fightclub at gmail.com. And my website's HOAFightclub.com. Have you been on the YouTube pages? Have you watched the YouTube videos?
No, I have not.
I have a YouTube
I-
video.
There's
Yeah.
an awful lot of work I need to do, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, it's overwhelming. And the one thing my friend always says, how do you eat an elephant? One bite
One
at
bite
a
at a time.
So I think that we all need to figure that, a good first step is calling your legislator, emailing your legislators and saying, hey, we need to make a change. I want to be a part of the stakeholders group. Tell me when it is, ask them, make them allow you to go. I find that those stakeholder meetings became really interesting when I started participating and representing the homeowner side.
Mhm.
That was a big shock for them. They had never had anybody represent the homeowners. So we have to have a voice. And if we let them get what we allow will continue. So I say no more.
Yep.
No more. So all right, everyone. If you don't have any more questions, I will see you guys all next Saturday.
Okay.
Oh,
very good.
wonderful. Thank you.
All right. Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you very
Thank
much,
you.
Ray.
Have a good day.
Thank
Hey,
you,
but you
too.
too. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.